Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about AI.
Do you use AI?
Now, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you're very familiar with AI, as it seems to be constantly talked about, whether that's in the news or in social media or wherever. And in the music world, that's no exception either. There's a number of debates going on, whether that's to do with copyright or AI replacing genuine human musicians. There's always a conversation somewhere going on about it. But typically these conversations tend to be quite negative, so what I wanted to do is take the time to see whether actually AI could be a useful tool for musicians, and more specifically songwriters. So what I've gone ahead and done is asked everyone's favourite AI model,
I love ChatGPT. I love it.
and what I've asked it to do is generate me some riffs as tab, because what I ultimately want to find out is whether it can be a useful tool for the songwriter when the inevitable writer's block hits, because that happens to all of us at some point when you're trying to write your own original music. So let's find out whether it is really just ripping off other people's music or whether you can use it to generate your own original material. So like I said, I've got ChatGPT generate me some tab for 3 different riffs in 3 different styles, and then I've done my best to produce them in a way that would put them into some context. So let's get into the first one. So the first thing I've asked it for is a sort of 90s 2000 metalcore style intro riff. The examples it gave when it gave me back were As I Lay Dying, August Burns Red and Parkway Drive, and the tab that it gave me back looks something like this. So clearly it's going for a chuggy sort of vibe. And for this one, I've asked it very specifically as well about the timing. So for this first example, I've tried to follow what the AI has told me to do as closely as I possibly can. It's also generated me a second tremolo picked layer to go over the top. So when we put this all together with a bit of production, it sounds and comes out something like this. So yeah, it's not great, is it? I certainly wasn't particularly impressed, but like I said, I've tried to follow this as closely as I can to the T, and as far as I'm concerned, I've managed to do that. But for whatever reason on this one, it's just done some really weird stuff. So the main thing that you probably noticed is the fact that the main riff it's generated is a sort of a 3-bar or three phrase repetition. And I made sure I checked with it that that was the timing and everything, which it was. But then the tremolo picked section that it's generated for me is a 4-bar section. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. So far, we're not off to a great start for AI, are we? But let's move on and see if it can redeem itself. So the second riff I've asked it to write for me is a modern hard rock riff, and the sort of thing I had in mind was something like Alter Bridge, as I'm a big fan of them. So again, it's gone for a dropped tuning, and the tab it's given me looks like this. So again, it's gone for that sort of chuggy kind of thing, which is appropriate for the style I've asked it for. And this time it's just a riff. For this one, I've also taken a bit more of a liberty with things like the timing and made those decisions myself. After the bit of the disaster with the first one, I started to lean into more treating this like a tool for inspiration, and then putting my own spin on it as well to see what the combination can come up with. So our hard rock riff sounds something like this. So that's better, right? I think when you take what it gives you with a pinch of salt and kind of work it out with your human brain somewhat, it can generate some pretty alright stuff. I think that came out okay. Now it's still very generic and I probably wouldn't use that as a release for a band, but you know, it's managed to come up with something that's semi-original, and you know, I'm sure a person trying to write something could come up with worse. So I would probably give it a pass on this one, but only just. It's still not fantastic. But let's move on to our final riff and see what that's like. So for this final section, I've asked it for an ambient post-rocky sort of section with a couple of layered guitars. For those of you who don't know, my personal music I would kind of categorise as a post-rock sort of thing, and I'm very much into sort of ambient textures and that sort of stuff. If you haven't listened to any of my music, then make sure you go and do that. It's in all the usual spaces. But for this one, we were going down the lines of something I'm quite familiar with. Interestingly, when you ask it for post-rock or a more ambient sort of thing, it also suggests you some effects to use on the different parts. So I've made sure I followed it and used those as well. So it's given us 2 layered guitars, and then on top of that I've asked it for a drum rhythm that it feels would go well with the parts too. So I've also added those drums in as I've done with the previous 2 tracks, just trying to give it sort of the typical production and really flesh these things out. So I feel like I haven't taken quite as many liberties with this one as I did with the last one. So this is mostly AI generated, and really the only things that I've made choices on myself are sort of the parameters for the effects and sort of more production-y sort of things rather than the actual writing itself. So check this one out and see what you think. And so there we go. I think third time's the charm, and in this case it's got it pretty good. I was quite impressed with the end result that we got out of this one. So maybe it's kind of genre specific for what it can do and can't do. The one thing I should say is as is typical of this sort of genre, the guitar parts are maybe a bit less challenging and a bit less complex, and really with a genre like this it's more about the effects and textures rather than any sort of fast playing or, you know, technical stuff. So I would say that's probably why it's been more successful with this one than say your metalcore or your hard rock. But I do think that this has been a pretty successful one. Whether I would use that in some of my own music, I don't know, but it's certainly an interesting idea for sure. So there you have it. There's 3 different styles of music put together with AI doing the tab writing but not generating it as a whole track. And I'd say the results are mixed, as you've heard. I mean, of course, you're free to make up your own mind, and if you are a songwriter and fancy giving this a go, do it and see what results you get. But for me, I'd say these are mixed results, and I probably won't be reaching for ChatGPT the next time I sit down to write a track. But nonetheless, it's certainly been an interesting experiment. So leave me your thoughts down below in the comments what you thought of all of this. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.